At one point, the first iPhone could have died from high cholesterol. I have no idea where ideas come from. They don't feel like I produce them. They feel a lot more like I just receive them. There is no idea, and then there just is one. And the good ones stick. I don't think anyone's concretely figured that one out yet. So to me, it's just a fun mystery to think about. I like to think that getting a good idea is kind of like some external unnamed mystery mentally impregnating you with a living, formless concept, and now you're just left to raise the thing. They are, after all, called a brainchild. You can end up in custody of any number of brand new ideas. Some of these ideas will go on to make the dean's list and graduate with honors, and some of the others are destined to chase a ball into traffic. Sometimes you have a good idea, but you don't accept it at first. You try and brush off an idea because you think you don't have the time or the energy or the love to make it happen, but somehow it just keeps finding its way back and asking for your time, no matter how many times it's seen you happy and content with your current ideas. But it turns out the idea is actually incredibly interesting. That's why you can't forget it, and you're glad it stuck around, and you probably should have just loved it from the beginning. For me, that's the idea some of you have seen in my newsletter. The idea in its larval form is still just electrical signals in your brain. It's tied to you and reliant on your body's health just as much as you are. It keeps itself alive by being interesting to think about, and it spreads by convincing you that it's interesting to talk about. As its disseminator, you translate its electrical form into mechanical tension in your vocal cords, which translates into sound waves, which translates into vibration of tiny ear bones in someone else's head, which is then routed through linguistic social conditioning back into electrical signals in their brain. Electricity propagates wirelessly from brain to brain through a transmitter made of throat meat to an antenna made of bones, where it's then decoded by an ancient idea we've all had uploaded into our system over years that we call language. And then thanks to that, we get to simply call that a conversation. Now, another weird thing is if an idea has a strong enough pull on you, it may even get you to create for it a physical body, some kind of weird idea horcrux. Maybe you write it down or sculpt it or design it. Now that little worm in your head is tangible. It's got a physical form. Literally everything around you besides nature, look around, used to just be an idea living in someone's head until it was born. I mean, this video was an idea, or is an idea. Really, it's me putting the idea out into the world for the first time. So technically, this is a video of me giving birth, which is frankly disgusting for you to be watching. The concept for the device you're watching us on used to only exist in the living flesh behind someone's eyes. When the first iPhone was still just a larval idea, it was sustained with blood instead of a charger and could have died from a clogged artery if Steve Jobs ate too many cheeseburgers. Now that same creature, or its child if you have an Android, is likely in your hand or pocket, straight from the meat in Steve's skull. Ideas are a weird critter to parent. Raising ideas can be hard work, but if you keep an open mind to new ideas, you can get tangential ideas that make it easier to execute on the original idea. So at least the void pays child support. Once I've received an idea, if it's a good one, it strongly feels like I'm supposed to pursue it. If you don't pursue the ideas you're passionate about, then you'll probably spend your breaths till you're dead, walking in circles while looking away from the glaring signs pointing you in the direction you're supposed to go. So you end up raising your good ideas and work on building a fine furniture quality walnut terrarium, earning the label of a woodworker or something else. But if you're talking about me, I'd rather you give me my respect as a hardworking single mother. While obviously I love all my ideas equally, how do I tell which ones to love even more equally? What's a good idea? Occam's razor, law of parsimony, whatever you want to call it, but simplicity is king. How can we steer towards design that is so simple it has to be tampered with to ever fail? I'm no professional designer, but I do have a problem I need to take a crack at, and I care a lot in both form and function about how it's solved. I need to move air through my terrarium. I need it to be a constant flow over the front glass to keep both the glass free of condensation and to refresh the internal environment. So, what's the best way to orchestrate all this? In other words, what's a good idea on how to do this? Relying on what makes our universe tick and planning around thermodynamics seems like a good place to start. In thermodynamics, we have the ideal gas law. Pressure is on one side of the equation and temperature is on the other, therefore they're directly proportional to one another. Gas tends to expand when it gets warmer. As the same amount of gas takes up more room, it becomes less dense. Now, if you put a piece of foam on the bottom of a pool of relatively denser water, you already understand that less dense materials will rise up through denser materials. Knowing this, we can move air by selectively heating portions of it, making it less dense and forcing it to rise. We have air in the terrarium, and we already have a light in the terrarium which is warmer than the ambient temperature. So now we got a method of moving air, and the power of the method relies on heat without added hardware. I think a good idea, when we're strictly thinking about function, is easy to forget. When something's broken, it's pretty much only then that I'm reminded its function was at all valuable in my life. Is it because I was actively ignoring it? I don't think so. I think in a lot of ways, dependable functionality is intended to be easily forgotten and taken for granted. Or looking at it in a more positive sense, it just seamlessly integrates into your life. It never bothers you to notice it, so you don't. Your laptop's charger may work flawlessly 1,000 times in a row, and you don't think anything of it, and that's the point. Wrap that dependable function in a healthy layer of artistic thinking, and you have what I'm beginning to understand as good design. Now, if you were a denizen of the poison dart frog keeping forums in the late 2000s, shout out Dendroboard, you would already be well aware that back then there was a clear difference in the design of vivariums, living homes for these people's frogs, between the European and American hobbyists. While Americans were converting mass-manufactured fish tanks and wiring computer fans into somewhat clunky but very functional homes for their pets, Europeans had been cutting glass and designing tanks from the ground up with built-in functionality since the hobby's functional conception in the region in the early 70s. Euro-style became the term on American forums for the design of these vivariums. Nearly all of the serious hobbyists saw the benefit and adopted this new style, and they continue to be the most popular design amongst passionate vivarium tenders. The main difference in the design was structurally integrated passive airflow. To make a Euro-style vivarium, all you need is a vent that opens directly underneath the front doors and another vent in the lid. The heat of the light that feeds your plants will cause the air at the top of the tank to expand and rise out of the top vent. This in turn draws fresh, cooler air up from the bottom vent, where it will eventually become warm enough to rise out of the top vent, and the cycle continues. They solved my problem. Functionally, at least. I still have to try and make it look nice. So at this point, we figured out what is good, what we need, how it works, and how to build it so it functions. The question now is, how do we integrate that functionality of the vent to a forgettably seamless level while adding to the aesthetic beauty of something that is made to be looked at as art, this terrarium? There is no essential difference between the artist and the craftsman. The artist is an exalted craftsman. In rare moments of inspiration, moments beyond the control of his will, the grace of heaven may cause his work to blossom into art. But proficiency in his craft is essential to every artist. Therein lies a source of creative imagination. Walter Gropius. I've been reading through this PDF on the Bauhaus Design School, recommended by the fantastic channel Distracted by Design, which itself is recommended by me for you to watch. Walter Gropius was the founder of the Bauhaus Design School and a firm believer that artistry and functionality should be married concepts. In his words, I see something pretty intrinsic to what I'm working on right now, and that is, how can I create the most functional and most artistic work at the same time? So I can't only think about the function of my vent. I have to think about its aesthetics as well. To fulfill my aesthetic requirements, it has to integrate naturally with the rest of the build. It must only draw attention to parts of itself that are made to be looked at, and what you do look at has to look good. I'm going for a very refined and tasteful look overall with this project, and the vent can't skimp on that vibe just because it has a job to do besides looks. You may have seen in my last couple of videos my process of making the Kumiko panels that serve as the front face of the vent. They're going to be the main player in wrapping the vent function with art. I thought a lot about the height of the vent here. I approached the composition of the hardscape and plants in a terrarium with the same kind of thought as a painter or a photographer might think about the composition of their work. There must be balance, pleasing lines, and a kind of energy that flows in a push between where it draws your eyes and a pull of where your eyes will be drawn naturally by default. My vent is quite short, to the point where I'm honestly gambling on its function because I want to preserve the height in this design as much as possible. With a smaller terrarium like this, scale must be emphasized, and plants with tiny leaves are the tool for that job. The ones I like for this job also happen to often be vining and trailing plants, which will look best in a natural kind of flowing cascade downwards. You need height for that. I'm saying all this to emphasize that every decision I have made in this project has been for a thought-out reason related to the aesthetic harmony of the finished piece. From here, I'm mocking up the rest of the build to see if this design has achieved constant airflow before moving on. I've sealed with some thin foam where the doors and ceiling of this tank will be, just to give us an idea of how it will function once it's done. I've put a pretty warm heat source inside to make it clear whether this works or not, and using this little smoldering piece of sawdust, you can see air, in this case smoke, is drawn in from the bottom vent to the right there and through my homemade Kumiko panels. It then will flow over the front glass and it will exit through the top. And where the top vent will be, you can see I've cut this slit in the foam, and I'm slowly sprinkling some very, very fine sawdust, and you can see there that turbulence as air comes out of where the top vent will be, blowing those fine grains of sawdust up. I'm incredibly pleased with how this works. So now, directly thanks to European poison dart frog breeders in the 70s understanding of basic thermodynamics, I will be able to have clear front glass in my terrarium. Going forward, I will be finishing the ceiling and lid for this tank, sizing glass for the doors, and fully waterproofing any internal wood with sealant and waterproof panels. After that comes custom formulating porous ceramic to make a new kind of living background, and I am incredibly excited about that. It's something that I don't believe anyone has done before with terrarium backgrounds. Anyway, then finally, plants. I hope you stick around to see this project through. And if you do, I think you'll appreciate what I have coming next. I'm going to continue to build off my porous ceramic formulations, and the final product of that next phase of projects will be artistically designed, practically self-sustaining sculptural pieces for mosses and other plants to grow from. In time, these will be carefully made displays that you can have from my hands into your home to bring art, nature, and care to any space. If you're interested in news regarding that project and to be amongst the first to have access to them, I have my newsletter linked in the description. That is all I have for now. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. As always, thank you very much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.